Religion is often presented as something purely spiritual, a path to truth, morality, or salvation. But if we look closer, we see another layer. Religion has also been one of the most powerful tools of social control. From shaping laws to policing behavior, it's been used to guide not just private belief, but the entire structure of society. When we say control, it doesn't necessarily mean only oppression. It can mean order, stability, or unity as well. Leaders throughout history understood that controlling belief was often more effective than controlling bodies with force. Armies can only reach so far. But if you convince people that obedience is divinely required, they'll police themselves. That's why religion has been so deeply woven into governments, kingdoms, and empires. Take ancient Egypt. The pharaoh wasn't just a king, he was considered a god. His authority wasn't up for debate because questioning him meant questioning the divine order. That belief stabilized the state for thousands of years. The same can be seen in medieval Europe, where monarchs claimed their power came directly from God. This divine right of kings wasn't just a theory, it was a political weapon. By framing authority as sacred, it became nearly untouchable. Religion has also been a way to control morality. In many societies, it defined what people could eat, who they could marry, how they should dress, and even what thoughts they should or shouldn't have. These weren't just guidelines. They were enforced with the weight of eternal punishment. Break the rules, and you risked not just shame in this life, but torment in the next. That's a powerful incentive to obey. Fear has always been one of the strongest forms of control. Fear of hell, fear of curses, fear of exclusion from the community. And when paired with hope, the hope of heaven, blessings, or spiritual reward, it created a complete system of behavioral management. Leaders didn't need surveillance cameras when people believed an all-seeing deity was already watching every move. Religion functioned as an invisible policeman in the mind, but what's striking is how this control often aligned with political and economic interests. In medieval Europe, for example, the church didn't just control belief, it controlled land, wealth, and knowledge. Priests mediated between people and God, collecting tithes and enforcing doctrine. Questioning their authority wasn't just heresy, it was rebellion against the entire social order. The fear of eternal damnation kept peasants compliant, while the promise of heavenly reward made their suffering bearable. We also see this in the way religion was used to justify slavery and colonialism. Slaveholders in the American South, for instance, often cited scripture to argue that slavery was divinely ordained. Missionaries accompanied colonizers, teaching conquered peoples that obedience to their new rulers was part of God's plan. These weren't harmless stories, they were ideological tools that shaped entire systems of exploitation. Religion gave oppression a sacred stamp of approval. Control also extends into gender roles. Many religions throughout history have framed women as inherently subordinate. In some traditions, this was justified as divine order. By embedding hierarchy into sacred law, questioning patriarchy became equivalent to questioning God. This made inequality self-reinforcing, as millions of women were taught from birth to see submission as holy. Again, religion wasn't just a personal belief system, it was a social structure, one that maintained power relations across generations. Even today, religion continues to act as social control in more subtle ways. Laws about marriage, sexuality, reproductive rights, and even education are often influenced by religious ideology. Public debates about morality often rely not on evidence or human well-being, but on religious authority. The idea of divine law still seeps into secular policy, shaping lives of people who may not even share those beliefs. But it's not just about control from the top down. Religion also fosters control from the inside out. People internalize the rules. They learn to monitor themselves, to feel guilt for stepping out of line, to shame others for disobedience. Sociologists call this internalized control. The idea that the most efficient way to regulate society isn't by force, but by shaping the conscience itself. Religion has been one of the most powerful tools for doing exactly that. This doesn't mean religion was created with bad intentions. Many early religious practices likely began as attempts to explain nature, to make sense of death, to create community. But as institutions grew, leaders realized the immense power these beliefs carried. And once you have a tool that can shape behavior at scale, it's almost inevitable that it gets used for control. Whether by priests, kings, or modern politicians, religion has often served the interests of those in power as much as the needs of ordinary people. One of the most revealing aspects of religion as control is how it shapes identity from birth. In many societies, you don't choose your religion. It's assigned to you, and with it comes an entire framework of beliefs, duties, and restrictions. By the time a child can think critically, they've already been taught that obedience to these ideas is not optional, but sacred. That's an incredibly powerful way to standardize behavior across millions of people. Education has often been one of the most tightly controlled arenas. For centuries, religious institutions dominated schools, deciding not only what was taught, but what was forbidden. Scientific discoveries that challenged doctrine were suppressed, sometimes violently. Knowledge was filtered to reinforce obedience. Even today, in some parts of the world, school curriculums are heavily influenced by religious ideology, not evidence. When you control education, you control the minds that will shape the future. The connection between religion and power is also clear when we look at how dissent is treated. In many historical contexts, questioning doctrine wasn't just a personal matter. It was seen as dangerous to society. Heretics, apostates, and skeptics were punished not because they were wrong in private, but because their doubts threatened the structure of control. Silencing dissent protected the system, not just the faith. And this pattern continues in places where blasphemy is still a crime, where leaving religion means social exile, or even death. Belief becomes less about personal conviction and more about enforced conformity. There's also a financial dimension. Across history, religious institutions have collected taxes, tithes, offerings, and donations, often under the promise that giving was a spiritual duty. This was not only about faith, but about maintaining wealth and influence. Even today, some of the richest organizations in the world are religious ones. Their power extends beyond spirituality into politics, media, and economics. And with wealth comes even greater ability to shape societies and control narratives. But perhaps the most subtle form of control is emotional. Religion often instills guilt and shame for thoughts or actions that cause no harm. People learn to regulate themselves, sometimes torturing themselves internally for desires or doubts. This isn't enforced from outside. It happens in the privacy of the mind. It's a form of control so deep that people believe they are policing themselves for their own good, when in reality they are conforming to systems built long before they were born. If religion is such a powerful tool of control, why has it endured so long? The answer is that it doesn't just serve the powerful, it also provides ordinary people with comfort, community, and a sense of belonging. Control works best when it doesn't feel like control, when people embrace it willingly. That's what makes religion so effective. It doesn't just dictate rules, it wraps them in meaning, love, fear, and hope. It makes obedience feel natural, even noble. But once we step back, we see the pattern. Across cultures and eras, religion has justified authority, maintained hierarchies, preserved inequality, and directed human behavior on a massive scale. Whether it's monarchs claiming divine right, governments enforcing religious law, or communities shaming nonconformists, the thread is the same. Religion is not just about belief, it's about power. This doesn't mean individuals who are religious are insincere or manipulative. Most believers live honestly, seeking comfort and meaning. But at the structural level, religion has consistently operated as more than personal faith. It has been a mechanism of social control, one of the most enduring in human history. And once we recognize that, we can begin to separate the human needs for connection, for meaning, for wonder, from the institutions that have exploited those needs to maintain control. When control is stripped away, what remains is the chance to build meaning freely. A society not bound by sacred authority can still have morality, compassion, and purpose. But those values can come from human needs and reason, not external commands. The challenge is harder because it requires responsibility instead of obedience. But the reward is greater because it is honest. It allows people to live not as subjects of invisible rulers, but as agents of their own lives. Religion has often been described as the glue that holds societies together. But glue can also trap, limit, and suffocate. Once we see how it has been used as a tool of control, we gain the freedom to decide what kind of society we want to build instead. A society where power is accountable, where morality is grounded in empathy, and where meaning is chosen rather than imposed. That's the promise that lies beyond control. So the question isn't only how religion has controlled people in the past. The deeper question is how much control we still allow it to have today, and whether we're ready to step into a world where meaning, justice, and freedom come not from authority above, but from humanity itself.